Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Resilient Experience.
My dear friend, where have you been? Where have you gone? Where did you win? Someone there, are you listening? Is it too late? My dear friend.
If you find other people that have big goals and you won't feel as crazy, you'll be motivated. Today, we have a very special guest. We have a professional MMA fighter coming out of St. Louis, Missouri, and he trains at Wolves Den Training Center. He is 12-5 in professional MMA, and he has an upcoming fight on May 17th in Nemesis Fighting Alliance. I'm super excited to talk to him about his background, his upcoming fight, and more. So let's go ahead and bring on Jordan Howard. You had mentioned a little bit before we started recording that you were training at Project Deliverance today with Matt, and you guys were training outside. Tell me a little bit about his gym and how that's been an important part of your training camp.
I've definitely found a home at Project Deliverance. I've been in the mixed martial arts and really just martial arts game for my entire life. Worked with a lot of different strength and conditioning coaches, and Matt is definitely different. He's obsessed, I would say, with mixed martial arts, and that passion that he has for it really carries over into the product that he gives his athletes. And so, it's phenomenal. Yeah, today
That's awesome.
He and I did a workout together. And yeah, it was so nice. We had to get outside and do it in the parking lot. So, and that's hard to beat.
Oh yeah. Yeah. Outside, we were just talking about that. Outside workouts are the best vibes. And just, I don't know, I feel like I get a better workout. I get better sweat when I work out outside too. It's like, it's a nice change of pace.
For sure.
Yeah.
The vitamin D helps with your mood.
Oh yeah.
Can't be beat.
For sure. Well, speaking of Matt and Project Deliverance, we've got such a unique moment going on here in St. Louis combat sports. We've got UFC St. Louis coming up May 11th. We got Sean Woodson, who also trains at Project Deliverance. And we've got Charles Johnson on that card. We got Joaquin Buckley on the card. So we've got a handful of St. Louis guys on this UFC card. And then 1 week later, for everybody listening who's coming in from out of town, you might as well stay another week because we've got Jordan Howard headlining at the Armory, Nemesis Fighting Alliance, and Danny is going to be co-headlining. So how excited are you for all this?
Oh, I can't wait. I feel like the UFC is going to be a great appetizer for, the main event, my fight on the 17th. So yeah, hopefully everybody sticks around to check it out.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
It's so cool to see it all kind of come together at such a just a unique time for us. It's so cool.
Oh yeah. And the timing was perfect because, with Sean getting ready for a fight, he and I, we do our strength and conditioning sessions together because we have pretty much the same timeline for our fights right now. So
Nice.
It's nice being able to work alongside him and see what he does in preparation for a fight in UFC, and to feel like that my strength and conditioning program is very similar to somebody that's at the level that I want to be at. So
Oh yeah, definitely. That's huge. Yeah, just training at the level you want to be at, not the level that you're necessarily at. But even looking at your record and looking at Sean's, if you guys were both in the UFC, I would think that you've both been training the same amount of time because you've got 17 pro fights and this will be your 18th. So that's a lot.
Yeah, I have 17 pro fights. I think I had 18 amateur fights. I've been,
wow.
Competing in mixed martial arts since I was 18. So back in 2008,
awesome.
It kind of dates me a little bit, but yeah, been around for a long time.
Yeah. We're all getting older. It's okay. So you actually came from a martial arts family, though. That's what's so interesting is your brother fights, your dad coaches you, I believe. And
Yeah.
Tell me a little bit about that, growing up with a martial arts family.
So my dad opened a martial arts school in a little town, Salem, Missouri, when I was 5 years old. And I've been training in martial arts really every day since I was 5. And, both my little brothers trained martial arts and mixed martial arts. And, they started as soon as they could walk. Whenever they were 2 years old, they would be on the mats training. So it really is just a part of our family and a part of who we are. So
That's awesome.
A lot of fun.
Yeah. So Taekwondo, was that your original discipline that you started with?
Yeah, so Taekwondo is like our, I would say like the main component of our all of our schools that we run. Now, because we do
Nice.
have experience in mixed martial arts, we also get to incorporate a little bit of that in there whenever we're teaching. But
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
Taekwondo is the meat and potatoes.
And how has your experience with Taekwondo, how has that kind of shaped your style in MMA? And do you bring a lot of elements from Taekwondo into your mixed martial arts style?
It's something that I feel like honestly is still evolving. I
Yeah.
feel like whenever I got into mixed martial arts, I was really trying to like be strictly like just boxing and just wrestling. And it was almost like I was kind of putting my Taekwondo skills on the back burner for a while because I hadn't seen a whole lot of people, in the UFC using it. But you see guys like Stephen Thompson now that are using more of those traditional martial arts skills. And so I've started implementing more of the Taekwondo skills and mainly the kicking skills that I've acquired through a lifetime of kicking, um, incorporating some of those into my mixed martial arts game, and I feel like it definitely makes me more dangerous.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, look at Edson Barboza still in he's pretty late in his career, but I mean, I think his last fight he got the win over Yusuf, and I think it was a 5 rounder too. So yeah, it's crazy. Like how it's funny. You mentioned like you used to focus on boxing and wrestling, and I feel like that's what is like historically has been like the best base for MMA is like good wrestling and good boxing. But now it's like since that's what everybody figured that out, now it's like everybody's switching it up, having to do different things because otherwise you're just going to be like the same as whoever you're fighting. And so now it's almost like having a unique skill set in a different area can almost be better. I don't know.
Right. And I feel like using that skill set will definitely help me to stand out. And
Oh yeah.
I am getting older, so my time is limited in the sport, and so I'm really trying to push to get into the big show. Um,
Yeah.
as a lifelong martial artist, I feel like the UFC is the pinnacle of the sport. And for me, having devoted my entire life to martial arts, I just love to compete at the highest level. So
Oh, definitely. Yeah, that's like
hopefully
what
this,
what everyone wants, I would
yeah,
think. If they're really trying to make a career out of this, it's like, yeah, you want to get to the UFC and not only get to the UFC but compete in on a very high level in the UFC too. And yeah, man, I mean, you're already 12-5, so like you could walk into the UFC tomorrow, but I know that's not how it works. So you got to get this
you
win.
you really just got to get on the radar. So
Yeah.
I'm just trying to get some eyes on me. So you know, my last fight was November of 22, and I
Right.
fought on a Saturday. And on Sunday, I was back in the gym training because we were looking for a short turnaround. And so ever since then, we've been trying to book a fight, and it's just been impossible to get people to sign a contract. My,
Yeah,
my
I've heard.
coaches,
I've
yeah,
heard that.
my coaches felt like we were having a hard time, like with the bigger promotions, getting a fight at 135 because the 135-pound roster is just, I guess, packed right now. So I dropped
Yeah.
to 25, but then they can't get any of the 25ers to sign a contract to fight. So, I mean, we've challenged, I think, every UFC Fight Pass champion. We've offered to fight wherever they want to fight, whenever they want to fight. I've offered to fight people for free, and they won't sign contracts.
Oh my
So
god.
I'm fortunate to have this one lined up. And NFA finally
Yeah.
got me a name. They came through. So big fan of
Yeah.
Nemesis.
Yeah, and a good opponent too.
Yeah,
Yeah. I saw a little
solid
bit. Yeah.
competition.
Yeah, good boxing, good just I mean, I feel like that's kind of at your level. Like you're not going to get anybody that's not good, like you're not going to get anybody that's not like really highly skilled in pretty much every area.
I
So
would like
it's
to think
like
that, yeah, in the professional level of mixed martial
yeah.
arts, that you don't encounter somebody that's not well rounded. Like everybody should be able to do a little bit of everything. So
Exactly. Yeah, so is flyweight going to be like your home or are you looking to compete at bantamweight?
flyweight is my path to the UFC. So,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be honest, like when I was fighting in Bellator, the last two fights that I did at bantamweight, I really didn't have to do much of a water cut at all. Like I was able to diet my way down to bantamweight, so the jump to flyweight isn't that big of a transition. So I'm
Right. How tall are you?
5'9".
5'9". Okay, I knew you were a little bit taller for a flyweight. So yeah, you would probably do really well at flyweight then,
Yeah,
especially in the UFC.
yeah. I mean, I feel like most of the flyweights that I see, 5'5" is a pretty tall
Yes.
flyweight. So
Yeah.
I'm not real sure about the guy that I have coming up. They have a few different heights listed for him, anywhere from 5'5" to
Yeah.
5'3". So I guess we'll see when we step in the
We'll
cage.
find
So
out.
yeah, yeah. I mean,
That's
I've been
funny.
known to fudge the scale, or not the scale, the ruler a little bit. Maybe try to 5'9.5", something like that.
I've noticed that a lot. It happens a lot where there's like on Tapology they're 5'6", and then on Sherdog they're 5'7". I'm like, wait a second. Like, how tall are you, dude?
Yeah, yeah.
I love it. I love it. That's funny. Well, I feel like. So wait, actually, I forgot to ask you: is this fight gonna be at flyweight?
Yeah, this fight's at 125.
Okay, that's what I thought. I want to make sure. And have you fought at 125 before?
No, this is the first one.
No. Oh.
So, like,
Okay.
all through my amateur career, I was 135. I did a couple at 145. I did one at 155 that was a short notice fight as an amateur. And then every pro fight, with the exception of one, has been at 135. So,
Interesting. Okay. But you said you feel pretty confident about your ability to cut the weight and all that, so I don't think
yes. So,
that's a huge fear for you.
um, Matt at Project Deliverance is, a huge asset. And then I also brought Tyler Menton from Ethos Nutrition on to help me with this weight cut. So
Awesome.
we got the right team in place to make it happen.
Well, perfect. Yeah, well that's going to be great. If you breaking into flyweight, I would imagine would be easier than breaking into bantamweight. At least to get
Yeah.
your name
So
out there.
yeah, Mop and Drew are the guys at Wolves Den that are helping me to book fights and looking out for me. And they both felt like flyweight was the best route into the UFC. And then not only
Yeah.
that, but the flyweight division in the UFC right now is just kind of sparse. So
Yeah, they need
I
help.
feel like
They need
not just
help.
into the UFC, but a path to the title in the UFC would be at flyweight. So
Yeah, what do you well, speaking of flyweight, we've got another flyweight main event this weekend in Rio. We've got Pantoja versus Ursig. What do you think about that fight? Does that just make you wish like you're getting into the UFC sooner, seeing a number 10 guy fighting for the title?
yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know how many fights this guy has like in the UFC, but I feel like he's still like fairly new,
I think he has
and he's already
3.
fighting. Yeah, that's insane.
Yeah.
So to me, I watch these guys and I feel like I can definitely hang with them. I can beat
Yeah.
if all of them. So yeah, yeah, it's exciting. So
Yeah.
that
It's
again, that's
crazy
the
how that
reason that we're dropping
happens
to
too in
flyweight.
that division because like a lot of people were mad when it got booked, but it's like, well, yeah, but look at the division. Like, there's not a lot of options for Rio, and of course, Pantoja like probably wants to fight in front of his home country before he loses the title. Like
Right?
I'm
Yeah,
sure that's really
yeah. I
important
mean,
to him being from Brazil. So yeah, yeah,
yeah,
that's interesting, very interesting.
yeah. To have
But
3 fights and already be fighting for a world title is insanity. So it just shows me that the UFC needs flyweights. So
exactly.
here we are.
Yeah, we got one. We got one. We got one for you, UFC. We got it. Yeah, that's funny though because yeah, but then you look at the rest of the roster. You look at like Perez. Like he just got a great win. He's I think he's about to fight again soon too. But like he's already lost to the champ and like who else? Brandon Moreno. He's already lost him like 4 times now.
Right?
And then you got Royval. Like, there's nobody. Like, Makayev. Okay, I guess that would have made sense in like Albazi, I guess, could have made sense, but I didn't really love the Kai Kara France fight, so it was like, well, I'm not mad about it, really.
Yeah.
I mean, if you
And I
look at
feel
the
like
performances, Urseg did kind of have the best performance out of all of them, so.
right. Well, I mean, and I
I don't
feel
know.
like the UFC is looking for ninjas. You know what I mean? They're looking for people to make the flyweight division exciting, and so
Yes,
they need
exactly.
strikers. They need guys with diverse striking arsenals. So I
Yeah,
fit
I
the
never
bill.
thought about that. There's not a ton of, like, really high-level kickboxers in flyweight that I can think of off the top of my head. There are
Yeah,
definitely some at bantamweight and featherweight, but I can't think of. There's probably one that's like really obvious that I can't think of right now, but
yeah, oh, definitely.
but that's the thing about flyweight, like kind of what we were just talking about, is like flyweight you can't really be a specialist because like you have to be good everywhere. It's so fast paced too. Like 1 minute you're getting, punched in the face, and the next minute you're getting taken down, and then the next minute you're in an armbar. You're like, whoa, like what just happened? Like it's
Yeah,
so fast paced. It's crazy.
yeah, they definitely move at a different tempo, and I feel like just the whole pace of a flyweight fight is faster. So I'm pretty excited
Yeah,
for that.
that makes it fun to watch though, and I feel like I wish that they did a better job. And I know it's hard because there's not as many fighters, but I wish they did a better job marketing flyweight like from the beginning, just so that way now people wouldn't be like, oh, flyweight, like,
Yeah,
like I'm like, what is the difference between? Like, there's not that much of a difference between flyweight and bantamweight. I'm like, why do people like hate on it? So it drives me insane because I love
yeah.
flyweight. I love watching it.
I feel
So
like people talk about flyweights not having the power to knock each other out. I mean, you see knockouts at flyweight all the time. So,
yeah,
like
more
one punch
lately
power.
too.
Hmm.
Yeah, yeah. I think it depends on the opponent more so than anything. Like if your opponent can't get knocked out, then yeah, like you're not gonna knock them out. But
Right.
but some people, like I don't know. I mean, I guess, yeah, like Moreno, he has a pretty good chin. So does Figueiredo, but he's at bantamweight now. So like, yeah, there's a lot of guys in that division that have a really, really strong chin. So
Yeah.
maybe that's why.
Durable. But being durable also makes for exciting fights. I mean,
Yes,
yeah,
it
you might get a
does.
decision, but I mean, they're going to slug it out the whole time. So
Oh yeah, yeah.
those are the
Some of
ones
the
the
best
fans
fights
love,
I've ever
right?
seen have been flyweight fights. Like Moreno versus Fig. I can't remember which one it was. There was one of those fights that was like, that was insane. That was one of the best fights I've ever seen. So,
Yeah.
yeah, people be
They just don't
sleeping
get me
on
wrong. I
flyweight.
mean, the UFC traded the flyweight champion. I mean, they got rid of DJ in exchange for Askren, who was kind of a bust.
What an L.
Yeah, yeah, big
Yeah,
time.
the UFC they definitely probably still regret that one, but that's all right.
Yeah.
Hopefully
Well,
they
I mean, I
don't do
just
that again
yeah,
with all these like PFL Bellator guys now. I feel like that's
right.
probably gonna happen again, but we'll see.
I hope not. We
Yeah, I
shall
hope not
see.
too. That'd be crazy. That'd be crazy. But there's a lot of talent there too, like in not only in PFL, but like the Bellator guys coming over. Like, I mean, I know a lot of people don't follow that as well as they do the UFC. Like, I'm one of those people. I follow the UFC way better than I do other promotions. But there's some talent there, for sure. Like
Oh yeah,
it PFL, especially in the heavier divisions. I feel like they have a lot of talent, but they don't really have flyweights, do they?
I don't think so. I haven't seen any flyweights on PFL. I don't think.
I haven't either. I
Well,
just thought
and
about that.
I don't think Bellator has a flyweight division either.
Really? Oh yeah, because you were in Bellator. You would know.
Yeah. Well, I mean, at that point, I was also pretty content at 135. So,
Yeah, that's fair.
but
That's fair. What? So when you go from fighting in like, obviously you've been fighting in Shamrock most of like your early career, and then going from that to Bellator, what's does it feel different? Is the competition like a huge jump, or like what was that transition like?
honestly, I didn't feel like the competition was a huge jump. When I lost two decisions in a row in Bellator, and that's when I ended my contract with them.
Yeah.
I was injured for both of those fights, so for me, they
Oh
kind of have
gosh.
an asterisk next to them. Um,
Yeah.
but I didn't feel like the guys that I was fighting were guys that I couldn't beat. I just
Yeah.
wasn't performing at 100%. I still chose to fight, so there's no excuse. But you know, I feel
Have
like,
you had to deal with a lot of injuries in your career?
I mean,
I mean, I'm sure
knock on wood,
everybody kind of does.
I've been pretty fortunate. I had
That's good.
one major injury leading up to my first Bellator fight, and that one ended up
Yeah.
getting scratched because of the injury. But um,
Uh,
I'm healed up now. I had it repaired and whatnot, so back in better shape. But honestly, I thought I was done fighting after I had my shoulder injury. I had the surgery and had a great doctor perform it, but he, told me he was cautiously optimistic about the outcome. So I was a little nervous, and I'd kind of given up on it. And then my younger brother fights, and he asked me if I'd come in and help him, get ready for his fight. So I went into Wolves Den and trained with him a little bit and got the fire lit on accident.
yeah.
So here we are.
That's funny. So your brother's the one that introduced you to Wolves Den.
Yeah, yeah. So actually,
Nice.
Danny Moriarty is the one that reached out to him to see if he'd come in and do some work. And you
That's
me and my brothers,
awesome.
we kind of travel in a pack, so we all go
Yeah.
together. So yeah, but
That's cool.
tried it out and loved it.
Wow. That's awesome. So that basically saved your career almost. Like you almost gave up on fighting and then now you're back. You're here. That's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, I had already decided that I was done. I'd already worked so hard to get to that level, and then to have an injury,
Yeah.
prevent you from achieving those dreams hurt pretty
Yeah.
bad. So
Oh
I gave
gosh,
up.
I can only
But
imagine.
yeah,
Yeah,
but
how what so
fate.
what's that shift like going from being like, okay, I'm done with this and then all of a sudden now you're like, okay, I'm going to do this. Like did you go back into it with the mindset of like I'm going to do this like I'm going to try to go to the UFC or were you just like I'm just going to do a fight and you get back into it and we'll see what happens?
So I was done fighting. I went in, helped Corbin with his camp, and then I was feeling pretty good. And we got a call from the guy that was doing the matchmaking for Bellator when they came back to St. Louis, and they had a fight opportunity for Corbin, but it was going to be I think at 135, and Corbin had fought kind of recently and is not a 135er. He's a little bit smaller
Yeah.
than I am. And so they asked if I wanted it. I was like, well, it would be nice to get one more in front of my hometown, So I was like, sure, yeah, I'll take it. And then, training for that fight, preparing, I felt better than I'd ever felt stronger than I'd ever felt. I was like, all right, well, after that one, maybe I'll do one more. And then I felt even better for that one. That's actually when I started going to Project Deliverance. I thought that I was kind of past my prime, but I feel like I'm just now kind of hitting my stride. So
That's awesome. Sometimes you see that. Sometimes you see fighters like it's weird. Like sometimes kind of like when they're in their 20s, it seems like they're like trying to figure it out. They can't quite figure it out. And then like when they get older, then all of a sudden they have like all these things dialed in, like their weight cut dialed in. It's so weird. But with some fighters, it's the
oh
opposite,
my gosh,
where
yeah.
they get older and it gets harder. So I don't know.
Right, right.
That's probably a
I
good
feel I
thing.
feel like those guys are the ones that are the like their best attribute is their chin. The guys that can really
Yeah.
take a beating. Like, yeah, that's not gonna last long. But
No.
I
No.
I kind of pride myself on being elusive. And not really getting hit. My favorite fights are the
Yeah.
ones where I don't get touched. So
Yes.
that
Yes.
that
That's
helps to
good.
extend your fight career a little bit. So
Definitely. Yeah, career longevity is important. It's an art. It really is an art because there's basically like I run across fighters where they feel like they have to train every single day, Danny, and and they have to go like a million miles an hour. Otherwise, they feel like they're not doing enough. And then like some fighters, they're really but usually it's when they get older, when they get like this, it's usually they like kind of prioritize rest more, recovery, all that stuff, and they kind of.
Yeah.
But it's got to
I
be
mean, I
hard
don't
though to
know.
get away from that grind and feel like you're still doing enough. I would have
So
trouble with that.
So again, Matt has helped me with that a lot. When I started with him, I wanted to be like grinding. I wanted to feel like I was dying every single day. But he's pretty good about, making sure that like the consistency is there. So, I mean, I'm doing something every single day, but every day isn't going to
Yeah.
be one of those killer workouts so that we get the recovery in. Especially at
Right.
my age, you have to make sure that you recover and you heal up. Otherwise, you won't be able to walk. So.
Right. Yeah, exactly. I'm like, you're not going to be able to fight if you can't move your legs, you know?
Yes. So the
It's important.
consistency over the intensity every day, I think, is key.
Yeah. Easier said than done, but yeah.
Yes.
It's important. It is. I think that's why I mean, shoot, look at Jim Miller. He just fought his 44th UFC fight and
That's insane.
is still getting through
Insane.
fight camps. Like that's crazy. He's 40. It's nuts.
Yeah.
That is
Wild.
so nuts. Yeah. It's cool though. It's really and he had Lyme disease too, which is just like blows my mind that he was able to power through that and still fight. And then now is like I mean, he got whooped in the Bobby Green fight, but before that he was on a tear. And
Yeah.
it's crazy at lightweight too. I'm like, what? Like this guy's just like defying all laws of physics. Like,
Yes. Yeah. Age is just a number. Age is just a number if you're Jim Miller, for sure.
yeah, that's awesome. But
Yeah.
well, I don't know. I
Love
think
to see
I
those
think it
older
depends.
guys doing well.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's great. It makes me so happy, honestly, because it's so like I feel like these narratives get thrown around so often, like and then everybody just starts saying the same stuff like, oh yeah, like once you're 35 and you're done in MMA and it's like no you're not. What are you
Still
guys
got plenty of
talking
time.
about?
Still got plenty of time.
Yeah. Yeah, look at Randy Couture. He was champ when he was like 45.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I mean,
Still
I know
plenty
it's
of time.
heavyweight, but it can be done. It can be done. It can be done in any division, I promise. if you have the longevity, if you take care of your joints, and yeah, you'll be good. And get lucky
Oh
too.
yeah.
You have to get lucky. That's part of it too. They
There's
don't tell you that part.
definitely a little bit of luck involved.
Yeah. Well, how excited are you to fight at the Armory? I went to the last show they had there, and it was amazing. Have you been there yet?
Yeah, I was at the last show, and
Oh,
I
nice.
mean, it
Cool.
is a phenomenal venue. I'm so
Yeah.
excited, and the fact that it's all ages for me is a big deal too, because you know
Yes.
I teach martial arts. My wife and I own martial arts schools. My
Oh,
family
that's awesome.
all own martial arts schools, and so being able to have like some of the students there and be able to watch and see, your instructor leading by example for me is kind of
Yeah.
a big deal. And when I fight for Shamrock, they're always at casinos, and the casinos don't let the kids
Yeah.
in. So this is
Oh yeah, I
exciting for
never
sure.
thought about that because it's not a casino, so you can have an all ages crowd.
Yeah,
Nice.
yeah, it's an all age venue. So
That's really cool. Yeah, that's super exciting because that's like your work on display, like for
right,
your team. That's really cool.
yeah.
So is it mostly kids classes that you guys teach at your school?
So we have lots of kids classes and family classes where like the kids and parents will participate together. Um,
Nice.
but I mean, that's the future of mixed martial arts. The future of martial arts in general starts with the kids. So I mean,
Oh yeah.
I started when I was 5. Both my brothers started when they were 2. So you never know which kid's gonna end up, in the cage.
Isn't that crazy to think about? Like one of the kids you're training could be like UFC champion one day. Like that's crazy.
Yeah,
That is
I
so
mean,
nice, and you don't
I feel
know.
like most of the guys in the UFC probably started when they were young. In
Yes,
some sort of combat sport, whether it be taekwondo or wrestling or jiu-jitsu. They all start when
definitely.
they're young and then do it for their whole lives. You can't help but get good at it.
Yeah. I've heard Taekwondo is a good place to start too because you're not getting like the full contact, but you are learning the techniques. So I feel like that's good, especially for like longevity, like we talked about. You don't want to be getting punch in the face when you're
I think
5.
that's a huge reason that I'm still able to compete at a high level is because, yeah, I mean, with
Yeah.
the rules in Taekwondo, it's, a lot about, gauging distance and building timing, reading your opponent, all valuable skills to use in the cage without the downside of like taking heavy contact. You know what I mean? So like we can go in and do a hard night of sparring and then still be able to walk the next day. So it's beautiful and
Yeah.
not really have to worry about, CTE or brain damage. Much better for your brain than something like boxing. So
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, for sure. I think that's a good starting point for kids to get into. A lot of kids now, they want to go straight into MMA. I'm like, yo, that's crazy.
again, from a longevity standpoint, I don't think that's a good idea. As someone who
Yeah,
loves MMA, I mean, absolutely love it. But
I agree. Yeah.
I
And part of me, like, I almost wish I would have done something when I was younger, but I'm kind of glad I didn't do a whole lot just because, like, I didn't get any injuries or anything.
right,
So
yeah.
it's good and
For
bad.
me, the benefit of martial arts at a young age also is part of the competition aspect. I mean, I've been
Yeah.
competing at a high level in Taekwondo since I was 5, so I'm used to that kind of pressure and like the preparation leading up to a competition. So I feel like that helped me to be a little more at ease, a little more calm when I'm competing. Some of these
Oh,
guys get,
yeah.
I feel like, so jacked up and their nerves get so bad, and it's because they haven't done, a whole lot of competition. But for
Yeah.
us, it's second nature.
Yeah, it's usually the guys in the back that are like calm that are like ready to go. Like they're just chilling.
It's the quiet ones you got to watch out for sure.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Like I remember I was at the last show and I saw I was sitting in the back with Jackson who's making his debut. And like you wouldn't have even guessed this kid was going to be fighting. Like he was just chilling. He was just sitting there just chilling and I'm like and then he gets in the cage and rear naked chokes this guy in like 2 minutes and I was like what the heck?
Oh,
Like
oh,
all the misconceptions that people think about fighters are like all so wrong. Like they're so wrong. It's so funny. Like no, they're nerds and they love like just chilling, like just being quiet and just like chilling and yeah, and they like to fight people, but they don't like to fight people like every waking second. Like that's not how it works.
no, I
Like
wouldn't consider myself like an aggressive person or a
no.
violent person, but I've just developed a skill set that makes me, really good at violence whenever I need it.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. It's usually the people that are really aggressive and in your face that are the ones that probably haven't spent as much time in the gym. So
Yes, the road ragers, that
yeah.
gets me every time. Like I'll
Yeah,
be,
they just see red
yeah,
and then
driving on Manchester, you see people get so angry, and it looks like that they want to fight. You're always wondering, like, I mean, do you
yeah.
really want to do that? Like,
Yeah.
you have
You
no
sure?
training. I spent my whole life preparing for this moment. Like, are you sure
That's
you want to do
funny.
that? Don't have road rage,
That is
folks.
awesome. Do you have any kids?
I do. We have a 3-month-old baby boy, baby Baylor.
Oh wow.
Yeah,
I was
fresh
curious
out the
about
oven.
that cuz I've seen and it's not always what happens, but I've seen a shift sometimes like when fighters become a parent, like it kind of gives them a little additional like motivation, I feel like, or a little bit more of a purpose. I don't know. Do you feel like that at all?
Yes, because whenever he's grown or he's a teenager, I want him to be able to look back on my legacy and have, something to follow my
Yeah.
footsteps in. I would
Oh
hate for him to
yeah.
look back and be like, oh, well, dad gave up whenever it got hard. So,
Right.
yeah, I want to build a legacy. I want to set the example that, I've had this dream since I was 18 years old of competing in the UFC. So I'd like to see,
Definitely.
I'd like for him to see me do that and fulfill a dream so that whatever he wants to pursue, whether it's mixed martial arts or not, he does the same.
Absolutely. Yeah, that was something I asked Dakota Bush about too cuz he's got kids. And I really liked what he said too. He's very similar to what you're saying. He said that, how can I look my kid in the face and tell them to chase their dreams if I didn't chase mine? And it's so true, because you're the example, and even if they pursue a different career than you do, they still have that example to look at of you going for it at the highest level. And then by the time they get older, they'll be like, oh, well, maybe their thing is like, I don't know, baseball or something. And then they end up going to fight or going to like literally play baseball in like a World Series or something like that. Like it's different, but it's like no matter what they do, they still are going to see that example and apply it to whatever it is they're doing. So I think that's really cool and really important. And that's good because, being a parent, I'm not a parent, so I don't actually know this, but I've heard from a lot of parents that's really freaking difficult and expensive. And
I mean,
you don't get a
I've
lot of
only been
sleep.
in it for about 3 months, but I can attest to the difficult part already.
Yeah, it only gets like new challenges as they get older. It's like doesn't get easier, it's just new difficulties. But I think that what you get out of it is really cool too. And I feel like it kind of makes it like I feel like at the end of the day no parent is ever going to like really say anything bad about like being a parent, like, oh, this is hard, it sucks, like at the end of the day they're gonna be like, well, I still would make the same decision all day long. I don't ever like nobody's ever gonna regret having their kid, but it does make it
he's a
it does
blessing
make
for
it
sure.
better. Yeah. Oh, absolutely. Yeah, it makes it like, now you have this little version of you running around and you can kind of guide them in the right direction. You can't control their life, but you can guide them and you can get them to the point that they can really like make their own decisions. And I think that's really cool. And then it gives you fulfillment because then you've basically, I don't want to say replicated yourself, but you've helped someone else basically like find their way in the world, which is really
Right.
cool.
Yeah.
Whether it's your kid or not, I
Literally
think that's
created
cool.
the next generation of, you know, disciplined, hardworking people.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting for you because you came from a martial arts family. How soon is your little one gonna be throwing some kicks?
I mean, he's already kicking. I don't know if he's doing
That's
it
funny.
on purpose, but he is already
Yeah.
kicking. But I mean, like I said, both of my brothers started when they were 2. We were literally raised in a
Oh,
martial arts
wow.
school. Every night we were at the school in classes. It's truly a family business. So, I plan on doing the same.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I love it. Well, he'll probably definitely have an easier time getting into it with having you and your brothers and your dad and everybody to help you. But
Yes.
that's
Yes,
cool.
for sure.
That's really awesome. Well, that's exciting. Congratulations, by the way. I didn't realize you had a child this recent. That's awesome. That's super cool.
Yep.
Very
Yep.
exciting.
Brand new.
Yeah. Well, we'll have to stay posted on the Taekwondo for for the little one.
For sure.
We'll
For
have to
sure.
see how that turns out. That might be interesting. I wanted to ask you a few other things. I wanted to ask you, this is kind of a deeper question, and then I'll ask you some questions that aren't so deep. But I wanted to ask you, out of all, because you've had a very long career already in the sport, and you're really still just getting started, but out of all, like you said, 18 amateur fights, 17 pro fights, out of all of that, is there a moment or is there a time in your career that you've really can remember that you've learned the most from, that you've grown the most from, and that has kind of shaped you into who you are now?
Yeah, so it's probably a fight where I felt like I was the biggest underdog. When I was I was actually defending the Shamrock title. I had won the Shamrock title with a late notice replacement. Um, and it was honestly a pretty close fight. The kid locked in an armbar pretty quick, and I, ended up slamming him and winning that fight. But when I
Nice.
defended the title, Shamrock brought in a guy that was, really good. He was had been on like the Tiger Muay Thai team. He had a
Oh,
better
wow.
record than me. He was way bigger than I was. And so, going into that fight, there were doubts, and I just kind of put my nose to the grindstone, got to work, and really put everything that I had into it, and then went out and completely dominated him in the fight. And so I kind of proved to myself, no matter what the odds are, that with a little bit of hard work, that I was capable of doing anything. So, and I think that was
That's
probably the one that
awesome.
I learned the most from, because there was some serious doubt going into that fight.
Yeah, I can imagine. Was it mostly doubt coming from within, or were there like other people around you that were doubting you, and that was kind of getting in your head?
I would say it's self doubt.
Yeah,
Yeah. I mean, it's not like
understandable.
my coaches were telling me I was going to lose or anything like that. But,
Yeah.
you can kind of tell from the coaches, like when you're going into a fight, what their thoughts are based on like,
Yeah.
I feel like what you're training or what they're talking a lot about. And so if they're always talking about, the skill set of your opponent, or like the weapons that your opponent has that they're afraid that they're going to use, like for me, that tells me that my coaches don't have a lot of faith in me. But, whenever going into a fight, your coaches are talking about the tools that you're going to use, the weapons that you're going to use, like the skill sets that are going to best suit you for this fight. Like, I feel like that shows you they have competition. That's what we hear a lot at Wolf's Den. So,
Nice. Interesting. I never thought about that. Like, you can basically kind of tell, because obviously your coaches are never going to be like, look, you're going to lose this fight. Like, like,
right,
why
we're
would they do
we're
that?
super nervous for you. Like,
Yeah, that would not help you at all. So that's funny. But even without them saying it, you can still kind of tell. That's really interesting.
right,
I never thought about that. Like, just kind of the conversations leading up to a fight and how that can affect you mentally. And yeah, that's super interesting. But now like you said from that experience, that even with all the odds stacked against you, you can still come out ahead and you can still win. So even
right.
if you, well, I'm sure if you get to the UFC, you're going to run into those opponents at some point. So it's like,
Oh yeah,
yeah, you have that confidence now from going through that and from being the underdog to now, even though a lot of that doubt was probably your own mind telling you that you can't do it, but then you did it. So you proved to yourself, not only you proved to everyone else, but you proved to you. And that's the most important thing, because you're probably similar to me in the fact that, like, before anybody criticizes me, I've already criticized myself for that same thing like 50 times.
a
so
hundred percent, 100%. I am
so then
my
you
biggest
hear it from
critic.
someone else and you're like, yeah, I know. Like, I've been trying to fix it. You're like, I got it. I'm trying to fix it.
You don't have to say it out
Yeah.
loud. Come on.
Yeah, I know. I feel that. That's interesting though. And that's one of the more mental parts of fighting, I feel like, and that's why a lot of times the fighters that are the most successful are not necessarily always the ones with the most skill and the most whatever, the best coach, the best team. Like, it's usually a lot of times who is the mentally strongest and who is able to, like, not only power through in a fight, but power through a whole training camp. Like, I feel like that's hard. That's almost
Oh
harder
yeah,
than the fight, because the fight's over in 15 minutes, you know?
yeah. Oh, the fight's way easier than training camp. 100%.
Yeah.
My
Yeah.
my favorite book that I've read recently is called Grit. It's by Angela Duckworth, and it talks about the same thing, like this intangible
Nice.
quality that you find in, high achieving people. And it's not
Oh, yeah.
always the most talented or the most skilled right out of the gate. It's the ones that overcome the most adversity consistently. So
Definitely.
I
Yeah.
strive to do that. Sometimes I
Yeah.
present myself with extra adversity just so I can build a little extra grit. So
Yeah, I do the same thing. Sometimes I feel like I sabotage myself at times, and I make things harder than they need to be. And I'm like, why didn't I just, like, do this the regular way? Why do I make everything so hard for myself? It happens. It happens. But that it's almost like, I kind of just thought of something, but it's almost like your own mind is like trying to prepare you for the next thing. So then when you're in the first thing, you're like let's say you have like You know, you're like, okay, I'm going to do one more fight local, and then my next fight will be the UFC. So you're already in UFC mode. Like, you're not thinking about I'm fighting on a local show. Like, you're already thinking about how you're going to be in the UFC. So you probably are making this harder for yourself in a way.
Oh, yeah.
Because you're like, this is not how I'm going to train when I get to the UFC. So let me just go ahead and start training like I'm in the UFC. And let me just put that challenge on myself now.
So, that's kind of been the mindset for a while now, is that I shouldn't be training just for an opponent. I should be training to be the best in the world, to be the best version of myself possible.
Yeah.
And that's martial arts training in general, just trying to be your best, to make myself, the most skilled martial artist, the healthiest, the fittest that I can possibly be.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. That's something that I figured out from, like, just doing predictions, too. Like, I've done enough of them now that I kind of, like, there's some fights that, like, I could watch film for 8 hours and still have no idea who's going to win the fight. Because at the end of the day, it might not matter what the other guy did in his last 30 fights. You know, it might not matter because they're going to fight the same way no matter who you are. So it's almost like there's fighters that kind of adjust, like Drakus, he's one that kind of adjusts to his opponent, I've noticed, where he looks very different in each fight. And then there's other fighters, like I would consider Max Holloway in a lot of his fights, not all of them, but in a lot of his fights, has fought the same way. Sean Strickland's another example. Danny's
I was just thinking Sean Strickland. Yeah. Nobody's going to change his game plan. He's got one game plan. That's it.
Yeah.
And he's going to implement it no matter what. So.
Yes, and he does it very well. And it's also a style that is very good for longevity because he's really not grappling hardly at all. He's not throwing a ton of kicks. I mean, he throws some. He throws like that teep up the middle, and he throws like some random kicks once in a while and leg kicks. But other than that, it's pretty much just boxing. Just crazy.
And he's pretty good with his defense. He's pretty elusive, so he's not absorbing a whole lot of damage. So.
Yeah, it's really interesting.
Except for Pereira.
Yeah, I feel like Pereira is just like everyone's kryptonite, though. Like, I can't think of anyone where I can confidently. The only guy I feel confident about being able to beat Pereira is Ankalaev. That's the only guy that I feel like, just because he's so good defensively and offensively, feel like he has like the secret recipe that could counteract Pereira, but there's not many others that I can think of that would be able to do it.
For me, it's just hard to bet against Pereira. Like I don't know that I feel comfortable betting the house on anybody against him.
Yeah, it's really hard now, especially with how easy he made it look against Jamal Hill. Like,
oh yeah,
I thought that was going to be way more of a fight than it was.
Absolute destruction.
I was like, what? Yeah, I thought Hill was going to wrestle, but he didn't even have time to. He didn't even, he hardly moved from that position the whole fight. It's crazy. Yeah, that was insane. That was the most insane thing I've ever seen in my life. Because I was there when, I saw it live. Like, it was nuts. Yeah. Yeah, and I was in the media room for most of the fights, but once we got to the main event, everyone was like, we're watching this, get out of this media room. And so we all went into, I think it was like the last round, or the last 2 rounds of the Weili versus Yan fight, which was a great fight too. And then just as soon as he walked out, I look at one of the other journalists, I'm like, he's winning this fight. I was like, do you see that face?
Safe bet.
Like, he's winning this fight for sure. Like, there's no way. I'm like,
stone face killer, always.
Oh my gosh, it's insane. And he doesn't even have to talk. He's so famous. I mean, I'm sure his Brazilian fan base, they hear him talk a lot, but we don't. But still, Everybody still loves him. Oh my gosh, I've never seen a U.S. fighter get less cheers than a foreign fighter in the U.S. Like, it's so crazy to me. It was insane. Like, it was night and day difference. Like, Jamal Hill walked out, and was like, cool, okay. And then and then Pereira walks out, and it just erupts. I was like, whoa. I'm like, this guy's, like, super famous. I'm like, this guy's, yeah, that's crazy. I'm like, he should, honestly, I know John Jones is supposed to fight Stipe, and everybody keeps getting mad at me because I want this fight to happen so bad, but I want Pereira versus Jones. Like, that's what I want. I want it so bad.
A dream fight for sure.
Yeah.
That should have been the UFC 300 card for sure.
I know. I even suggested that before. I was like, they should just get Stipe or Jones versus Pereira and scratch the Stipe fight, or maybe they'll do it later. Like, if Jones loses to Pereira, okay, well then just make him fight Stipe and he'll come back. It's fine. But I'm like, it's such a good fight. Like, it's double champ versus double champ. And then if Pereira wins, he'd be triple champ. That would be the first ever triple champ in UFC history. Like, how can you not make that fight? How can you not do it?
Yeah, that's a historic fight for sure.
Yeah, and I don't even care who wins. I just want to see it. I don't even care. Like, just please make it happen. That would be
maybe
awesome.
Pereira a little bit, but you know.
Yeah, well, just because we had, like, that would be the first triple champ, and he's had the fastest path from just being a champ to a double champ too. So that would definitely be, like, for years to come would definitely be, like, the fastest triple champ ever. Well, it would be the first, and then it would also be the fastest probably for a very long time, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That would be insane. Well, speaking of UFC, I wanted to ask you some random UFC questions. Since we're on the topic now, before you go, I wanted to ask you a couple things. We'll do a few MMA knowledge question, trivia, whatever you want to call it, and then I'll ask you just, like, your opinion on a few things.
Oh, I'm going to be terrible at these.
We'll just have some fun.
Don't
worry, it's nothing too hard. It's mostly stats. Right. So if you get it wrong, nobody's going to, like, think you're a casual. Obviously, you're literally a professional fighter, so if you're casual, then be like, yeah, well, he's in the gym. He's busy training. He doesn't have time to watch all these fights. I wanted to see what you thought would be the answer before I give you the answer on these. So we'll see if you get them. We'll see how close you get. So the first one I want to ask you was, which UFC fighter has the most top position time in UFC history?
Ooh. I want to say Khabib because that's literally what he does. But I also don't feel like he had that many fights necessarily in the UFC. So I would say maybe somebody like John Fitch.
Oh, that's a good one. Somebody I did not.
Super boring that takes people down and will literally lay on them the whole fight.
You know what's funny? You're actually really close. So, do you want me to give you the answer? I'll give you the answer.
Yeah.
The answer is George St. Pierre, which seems obvious now that I'm saying it. But it really doesn't seem that obvious. Like, I would have thought either, like, Matt Hughes or somebody like that. But
because I feel like GSP liked to strike at least a little bit.
He did. But I think it's just because he's been in so many title fights. So he has 2 hours and 42 minutes of top position time.
Wow.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah. Wild.
That's insane. That's so insane. And number 2 is Clay Guida. But guess who's number 6 is John Fitch, 2 hours and 8 minutes. So you weren't that far off.
All right. Kind of close.
That was actually a good answer because that's like somebody nobody would have picked too. I feel like nobody would have picked that. Except for like a diehard MMA fan would pick that. But other than that, yeah, that was a good one. And then my other question is, who has the highest significant strike accuracy in the UFC of all time? So not just active, but like of all time.
Significant strike accuracy of all time. I would say somebody like Nick Diaz.
Oh, interesting. He does have some crispy boxing.
Yes.
Close. Close. The number
Okay.
one. Are you
Alright.
ready for this?
Yes.
The number one is Alistair Overeem, 74.3%.
Okay. Well, all right. So I guess he didn't have that many fights, so he didn't necessarily throw that many strikes. Okay. All right. I get it. I get where the math's at now.
Yeah, because
Oh,
guess who's
man.
number 4 is Pereira.
Oh, that makes sense too. Fewer
And
fights, less
number
misses.
3 is really shocking. Tatiana Suarez is number 3.
Okay, I'm gonna be honest. I didn't see that one coming. I didn't see that one coming.
64%. Isn't this wild?
Yeah.
It's so interesting to me. They have to have at least 5 UFC fights and 350 significant strike attempts to be considered in this thing.
Oh,
But,
well, see, that's what it was. If you would have told me that, I would have had it first guess. For sure.
Yeah. And then number 10 is Islam Makhachev, which actually checks
That
out.
yeah, because he throws one punch and then shoots. So, right?
Yeah, he doesn't have to throw a ton in his fights, it seems like. He's pretty much like he throws, he lands, and then he takes you down if he needs to. Except with Volkanovski, he didn't need to do that.
Yeah, true.
Still makes me so sad.
I was pulling for Volk, you know,
Oh, I think everyone was.
the old dog.
I already asked you this question. Well, I already mentioned it earlier. Well, maybe you don't know the answer to this. Who has the most wins in UFC history? Now I kind of
Most
feel like I gave it away.
wins in UFC. Is it Jim Miller?
Yeah, it's Jim.
Yeah, I got one.
You got one.
One out of 3 ain't bad.
He has 26 wins in the UFC.
Yeah, that's wild.
It's insane.
Wild.
And
still
for a
counting.
while it was
And still counting.
for a while it was Cerrone was number 1, but now he's at 23. So he got passed up.
He might have to come back, make a return.
Yeah, I know. Jim Miller's messing with his records.
Yep.
That's awesome. Yeah, I was trying to think what my other one was. I think that was all I had. Yeah. And then I wanted to ask your opinion on a few things before we go. What is the best base for MMA? There's so much argument. Is there a best base for MMA?
I mean, in this day and age, I don't think that you can have a base. I think you have to be well-rounded. I mean, you have to be doing everything from the beginning. Because if you're only focusing on one thing for the first 15 years of your training, 10 years of your training, then that means you're neglecting a skill set. So, and you can't get away with
Absolutely. Absolutely. I agree. You can't have any holes in your game anymore. People are too slick to that.
that. Mm-hmm. For sure.
And then, who do you think has the best grappling in MMA?
Best grappling? That's a tough call. Probably me.
I love it.
I'm kidding. I mean, like active like best
Yeah, we'll
active
go active.
fighter. All right.
Yeah.
I mean, I think you have to go with somebody like Islam
Yeah.
or Oliveira. Oliveira
Yeah.
probably for jiu-jitsu, but Islam for wrestling.
Oliveira, I mean, I feel like people didn't really appreciate how high level of a fight his fight with Arman was. That was probably the most high level fight on that card by far. In the fact that we got to see them strike and grapple and got to see Arman almost get submitted like multiple times was great.
Yeah.
That was awesome. I mean, to me, those are the two best grapplers in the UFC right now, in my opinion. But that's my opinion. Besides Islam, he's like his own category a little bit.
I would like to see maybe Johnny Eblen in the UFC. He's another former Mizzou wrestler, so kind of from our neck of the woods. I'd love to see him in the UFC because I think his grappling is also pretty solid. But he doesn't really ever have to use it because he just knocks people out. So.
Right. I've heard because he trains at Extreme, right?
I think
he does. I've heard I think it was like he was training with Strickland or somebody. I don't know. I don't remember who they said, but they were like, "Oh yeah, this guy's a monster. This guy will maul you."
For sure.
So, yeah, that would be cool. That would be really interesting. I don't know how those contracts work in PFL, Bellator, or any of that, but that would be a great signing for the UFC too.
Yeah,
That would be great.
Like if there was one person that they brought over, that's what I would want.
Oh yeah, yeah. If you look at that whole roster, yeah, probably. Is he the one that fought Impa last? I can't remember.
That's a good question.
Because Impa won,
I'm not sure.
but I don't remember if it was his. Because they both kind of fight in multiple weight classes, I feel like. So it's hard to remember. Because Impa's not normally a 205er, but he is now. But anyways, I go on so many tangents. Which division in the UFC do you think is the most technical, where you have to basically have like the most, you have to be the most highly skilled and most technical fighter in?
I mean, it's got to be the lighter weight classes. I mean, because the guys there are so fast that if you're making mistakes, they're going to capitalize on it. So
Yep.
I would say flyweight division.
Yep. I would agree. I think the lighter weight classes right now, yeah, you have to be extremely well-rounded. You have to be very highly skilled. I feel like you have to be well-rounded, but you have to have one thing that you're like a little bit better at than the other guys.
You have
I feel
to
like that's
be able
like
to
kinda,
dominate somewhere.
And it can just be one little thing. It could be like your jab is way better than everybody else's jab. So, and sometimes those little things can make a big difference. Well, GSP, like he had an excellent jab, and that was a lot of his success. So, yeah.
Jab and that Superman punch off the jab.
Yes.
Or off the lead leg. Yeah.
Yes.
Superman jab.
GSP was so fun to watch because it didn't matter where the fight went. You're just like, this is amazing. Like, everywhere. On the ground, on the feet. Yeah, he was just incredibly skilled. Last question, and I'll let you get back to your day. Who do you think has the best striking in the UFC?
Ooh, the best overall striking in the UFC.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, geez. That's a good question. I would have to go with Sean the Sniper Woodson, without a doubt, no questions asked. And I can't wait for...
People be sleeping on him. People be sleeping on his striking.
I can't wait for UFC St. Louis, because he's going to get to put it on display.
Oh my gosh. That's going to be insane. I can't wait. I'm so excited. I'm almost... Like, it was cool doing UFC 300, but then I, like, was on the plane going home, and I was like, wait, I get to do this again, like, at home. Like, this is crazy. This is so cool. I'm like, I'm so excited. So.
I can't wait.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. That's going to be awesome. And I get to, like, ask him questions and stuff in the media room, so that'll be fun. And Buckley will be there, and Charles Johnson, and I thought, Michael Johnson was on there, but he had to drop because he had an injury.
Yeah.
I forgot about that.
Yeah,
that sucks. But at least we still got a few. So
right.
That's
still
good.
missing a few. I wish they would have, made
an
attempt to get more of the guys on there, but
we could have got the whole card stacked with St. Louis
Dakota
people
on there. Yeah, Evan Elder. Like, come on, man.
Yeah, Dakota. Yeah, because he's like right there. He's so close. Probably should be in the UFC right now.
Agreed.
Agreed. Yeah, but awesome. Well, man, it's been great talking to you. I'm really excited to see your fight, and I don't think I've seen you fight before, like in person. So that'll be awesome, and I'll be covering that event too. So it'll be back to back, UFC. Excellent. 1 week, and then the next week I'll be at the Armory. So that'll be fun.
The main event at the Armory. That's right.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you guys got to see the real main event, okay?
Yeah.
No more. We're not talking about Derek Lewis after Saturday. We're talking about Jordan Howard and Danny Moriarty.
That's right.
That's funny.
All right. Well, I appreciate you having me on. Thank you.
Of course. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And yeah, I'm super excited for your fight. So awesome.
Thank you. Thank you.
No problem. Well, I will let you get back to your day. I'm sure you have a million things to do, so I appreciate your time, and